Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, welcoming you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. Damn, Rizzle, and just call me Fuego for short. And if you are tuning into this, it is another Animated Monday. Yes, that's right, peeps. And this is where, in a new ongoing segment on the channel, I've been intending to explore different forms of animation that are a little bit more on the adult side, some that I have seen previously and some that I have not, or ones that I watched a long ass time ago and barely remember, which was the case with heavy metal. That's right, guys. This is a seminal 1981 sci-fi fantasy with lots of adultness to it. That's right. It was based on the heavy metal adult comics, which, delved into the same themes and stuff. So this is an anthology that adapted a few previous stories and then had a few others that were just, kind of like fresh for the film and in a same vein spirit, whatever the hell you want to say. And I didn't remember this for shit. I will be honest. It had been so long since I broke out my VHS from God knows how far back. I mean, this was a walk down memory lane, and I will be honest, as I was rewatching it, didn't remember it very well at all. So this was cool to come at it with fresh eyes, different perspective, much older at this particular point, being in a heavy metal band myself now and everything. I mean, played that form of music for a while, but I mean, great soundtrack for this. That's probably more so than anything what I actually did remember was the fact that, oh, there's Journey Open Arms and there's, what is it, like it's Veterans of the Psychic War or something like that, so you get some BOC on there. I probably butchered the title of that, sorry, but I mean, two songs from the Mob Rules album with Dio, and then you've also got, like, I mean, Cheap Trick has some badass stuff on here. You've got Devo. I mean, soundtrack is probably what I remembered much more so than the actual film. But just to give a little bit of background as to like how the anthology all ties together, there is this creepy ass green orb that we get at the pretty much beginning of the film. It's like, it's the framing device of sorts. And this astronaut, he's like in a Corvette and he comes out of a space station and, he's back on what is presumably Earth, or at least like a similar planet of sorts. And that's the thing, these stories definitely, they're not really horror, but there are like darker fantasy and, science fiction sort of vibes. But there's also a campiness to a lot of it too. It's a little silly. This first story, not really though. Like, astronaut gets home and he's presumably back at his place, and he has like this, I don't know, this protective like suitcase pack kind of thing, and his daughter's like, "Would you bring me? Would you bring me?" And he opens it up and this green orb starts to glow and it just like melts him, and then starts talking to the daughter and is like, "I'm the most evil thing in all of existence in the universe," and blah blah blah, and let me like give some history about how many I've affected and how I've enticed so many and yet they all feel my wrath and blah blah blah. So she's like entranced and yet completely frightened, and that's where it starts to go to different stories where the orb is something that it definitely it brings about death and woe. So it's 2031 in this first story, and you've got this cabbie, this taxi driver in New York City, and remember this is 1981, and so them talking about New York City being the grossest of the gross. New York City was a pretty rough ass place before Giuliani went and tried to clean that shizzle up, man, but so this is a story I didn't really, I didn't despise it or anything, but I didn't really find it that particularly interesting. It's got a very noir type feel to it though. So the cabbie encounters this beautiful woman who, that's the one thing, there is sex and boobs, like these big inflated juggies in pretty much every single segment, but that was the spirit of heavy metal, right? So, so he encounters this woman whose father is killed, and then there's a couple real slimy slizzballs that are after her, and she's trying to protect the orb because she has it in her power and or in her control, and she's hiding it. They want to buy it from her. They were initially trying to get it from her father, hence him being killed. And so, and then Cabbie ends up having a thing with her and, trying to help her protect it and see through the situation. And it's just okay. And if you're familiar with noirs and you know, the proverbial femme fatale, you probably will see where this is going, and I definitely did, despite the fact that I didn't remember the story at all. And so yeah, this is not a standout for me. Animation is okay. It's definitely a lot better in other ones. It's cool the way they melt people and stuff, and the way the cabbie defends himself is funny to me. But really, the first main segment, the first main story it's all right. You know, nothing to write home about specifically. Then we segue into another tale, and this one is about this nerdy kid who is like, he's shocked off to this foreign world where he is transformed into a big, muscular homie. And the interesting thing about this place is with so much in heavy metal, is that it's almost like, dare I say, a Dark Tower type vibe, in the fact that it's like the world has moved on, and there's lots of major medieval fantasy aspects to what's going on, and like kind of like orc kind of people, and these different, like, you know, weird races of creatures and stuff that are like kind of humanoid in the fact that they can talk and they're like mentally developed and everything, but yet there is also remnants of older advanced technology like machine guns and silliness like that. So yeah, this kid, he's transformed into big buff like Conan kind of guy, albeit a peron, you know, he's got the shaped head and stuff. And yeah, he basically gets himself embroiled in a situation where he rescues this beautiful woman who's about to be sacrificed, and then she wants to repay him with sex, and then, you know, she gets captured and he is sent on a mission by, there's like two rivaling leaders. One is this beautiful woman, this like evil queen of sorts, and then the other one is a very flamboyant guy, and he's the one who sends him to go against the queen-esque lady who was trying to sacrifice the other woman in the first place. And I mean, it's got some quirky charm to it, in the fact that like when he first gets there and he realizes he's naked, the, you know, kid, and he's like, oh wow, this new body, I don't want to go around like showing my nads or nards or whatever the hell he says. So I mean, there is a juvenile aspect to this, and the situations he gets himself in, where he gets to just bang down all these, you know, these beautiful ladies and stuff, and he's just like, wow, I wouldn't be able to do any of this back on Earth, but here twice in one day. It's funny, but once again, in that same regard, it's campy and silly and relatively forgettable. There's some interesting bloodshed here and there, and we get some cool creatures at one particular point where they're going through these like underground tunnels and stuff. But this story, just like the first one about the futuristic cabbie, it just didn't really do it very much for me. It was, once again, just okay. As we segue into the third story, absolute worst story in the entire collection here. It's about this space captain who is on trial for multiple murders and a few other things, and so the orb continues to be, you know, the thread line, just to make mention of that. And so in the kid's story that I was just talking about, the kid finds the green orb and thinks it's a meteorite, and he puts it in his collection, and that's what actually sends him to this other world and transforms him. And in the next story that I'm talking about with the captain on trial, which is the goofiest of all of them, in all honesty, this guy who is going to be a crucial witness for the captain on trial, he happens to pick up the orb, and he like beefs up into this huge, like, grotesque, he almost like hulks out kind of thing, which is ironic with, you know, the greenness of the orb and everything. And the Lou Ferrigno show was still probably pretty fresh in a lot of people's minds. I'm not sure if it was still on TV in 1981 or if that was just a late 70s thing, but yeah, it hulks this dude out, and he almost butchers trying to get this stupid captain off, and so it just turns into a little thing. But it's one of the briefest stories, and it's one of the most boring. I didn't like it at all, and so that's another thing to mention. And then we segue into another really short one, but this is my number 2. This is my second favorite of the lot, probably. Written by Dan O'Bannon. Dan O'Bannon of Alien and Life Force, I think he also wrote as well. So it's a guy with some history in sci-fi and a good pedigree. But yeah, this is one about these, it's called B-17, I think, and it's like kind of World War II-esque bombers, and you know, they're on this run, and a bunch of peeps get shot in the back, and it's down to like just the two captains, and the pilot and the co-pilot, and one of them goes back to look and, you know, see how many are all dead, and then the green orb basically which had been falling from space, it's behind this plane, and it raises the dead guys, and they all become these like really grody zombies, and it's pretty rad, man. I mean, it's very cool. And the co-pilot, it's either the pilot or the co-pilot, one of the two guys up in the front, you know, he parachutes, and then he jumps down and he finds himself with more zombified nuts stuff going down. So that story, it's kind of gory, and it's very cool. It's the darkest, it's humorless in comparison with just about every other one except for maybe our last story. Yeah, this one is very serious, and I dug the heck out of it, so props to them there. Then we get to another silly one, but this is a silly one that actually works for me. And this one is about, so this guy who works for, well, he's basically, he's a prominent person. He's on his way to the Pentagon, and there's all of these reporters harassing him about, hey, you know, why are people starting to mutate from, you know, this green emanating, you know, whateverness. So you know, obviously, what's going on there. And then he tries to downplay it, whatever, save face, and then you find out when he sees this hottie that he is like an android or something, and so he tackles her and tries to like sexually assault her. And then this weird plane from another planet, this ship I should say, from another planet comes down and basically tube sucks both him and inadvertently the lady up. And then when the lady gets up on this ship, this robot coerces her into robot sex, and then there's these two druggy pilot alien guys, and they're like, get the plutonium whatever stuff, and it's just a bunch of powder they start snorting, and it's just ridiculous, man. It's like, now I'm trying to remember, there's interesting voice talent in this. So you've got Harold Ramis, you've got John Candy playing a bunch of different roles, including he's in this one, Eugene Levy. So there's some noteworthy names on the voice acting side, not just in all of the music that I mentioned initially. And then since we are rounding out with just one more story after this, I do have to mention that this was produced by Ivan Reitman, and then it was directed by, I forget the guy's name, Gerald something, if I recall, but he had done previous work on Yellow Submarine for the Beatles, and so that was a thing. And yeah, this story is goofy, but the goofiness works, and the animation is some of the best in this entire thing, especially the flight through space in this weird, like, as Catherine put it, Pac-Man looking spaceship of theirs. And so this one was fun. This one was actually just the right amount of camp. And this one, unlike a lot of the others that delve into more severe violence, this one was, yeah, pretty devoid of that. This one was funny, but yet still enjoyable, and so I have to give them credit for getting the right balance in this particular one. Then we come to the centerpiece. Like, if you've seen this with this badass, like, warrior chick on the front, and she's riding, like, this, I don't know, it's somewhere between, like, a bird and a pterodactyl. Yes, we know that they are, you know, evolved from, you know, kind of the same regard and whatnot, but yeah, so the orb is huge by this particular point, or at least in this particular story, and it goes into a volcano, spills out all this green sludge that mutates all of these guys, and this is where we get the Mob Rules song, where they charge this city, and they just start killing everybody. And apparently this city had a pact with this ancient, presumably extinct clan of warriors, if they were ever in this sort of dire situation. And yeah, the stress goes out, and it doesn't get to this lone last warrior in time, to Tanaka, something like, anyway, doesn't matter. She's on all of the promotional material for this, and she is this stoic, silent, like, probably, if you're going to be honest about just how buxom all these babes are in this particular stuff, and yes, of course, we see her naked too, but she's probably the most beautifully animated of all of the women in this, and you know, she's just got a badassness about her that is very cool, and so she goes to avenge you know, just the destruction of this city against this group of mutants, and she in turn gets captured and tortured and all this other stuff, but then some dope fighting ensues. Her and her weird bald bird are just super cool. I mean, it's some of the most beautiful animation in the entire thing. It's some of the most violent segments in the entire thing, and in my estimation, the final segment really just embodies the spirit of heavy metal more so than anything else on this entire thing, because it melds the, you know, slight tinge of sci-fi with the fantasy and with the, like, with the violence and stuff and the dope songs. I mean, this is, when it comes down to it, you also have Devo too at this bar she goes to, which is really funny and makes sense and brings that futuristic aspect that I've made mention of, and that's where the sci-fi comes into play. So, I mean, if there's anything that really feels the most like what I always saw heavy metal as a magazine, you know, and I mean, besides just cool stories and, you know, awesome painted artwork. I mean, Bernie Wrightson did a lot of stuff with heavy metal and various other really dope illustrators, but yeah, I don't so much like the way that they tie in, or at least try to tie in, the end of this story with the epilogue slash like framing overarching situation, because it does try to tie itself back in with the girl who has been kind of just held hostage by the green orb who is telling her all of these stories. But I mean, at the end of the day, it still really, really works, and I forgot how much I would enjoy this, I guess. I mean, that's the thing, I'd forgotten a lot about it, and just being reinstilled with the coolness of heavy metal. Now, I know there is something called Heavy Metal 2000. That one I actually have never seen, and I've heard from many people that it's just nowhere near as good. I believe it did come out in the year 2000. It's an animation advancement. It's not gonna probably have the same sort of charm, but yeah, I mean, I'm curious to give that one a scope if there is any interest from y'all who have tuned into this. But that's gonna be the end of the proceedings for this that is about to turn, boy, yeah, 40 years old next year. That's nuts. But yes, 1981's heavy metal is a classic for a reason, even if all of the segments aren't as strong as one another. That's the nature of anthology storytelling, whether it's a book, whether it's something on TV, whether it's a film. I mean, you're always gonna have weaker links. It just happens, you know, it's per the course, I guess you could say. So yeah, but that's gonna be it for today, y'all. Gracias very much for tuning in on this Animated Monday. I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find Wa on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube here, and here on my channel is where I cover more sci-fi, geek-tastic stuff. You know, back when we had big budget comic book stuff, you know, that was definitely a thing. Lots of the big, more blockbuster action, whatever, and also lots of indie art house drama and things like that. Fantastic Planet was actually the previous animated film that I did on this, which is a very interesting French film from the 70s that's very psychedelic, super trip-tastic, and that's kind of the vibe that I want to continue pursuing with Animated Mondays, is just that more sophisticated animation, because I will constantly contend that the stuff is not just for kids, and I love the beauty of that sort of art and visual approach. I mean, it's a ton of fun. If you want stuff that's much more of the spectacular variety, that scarific shizzle, you need to go to youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. That's where, if you're here, unless you stumbled upon my channel, there is a devout few for the near 1,000 subscribers I have here, but really over there we have almost 33,000, and yeah, all kinds of stuff from trailer reactions to makeup tutorials, unboxings, reviews of everything from, you know, television to movies to video games, let's plays in that regard as well. So yes, it's a lot of fun, and yes, I definitely appreciate anybody who likes, subscribes, and shares here, and does the same over on The Horror Show. So I've been Fuego, y'all have been rad status, and until the reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant viewers and readers alike, but I am hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver about film sooner rather than later. Peace out, stay safe, and watch more movies.